The spear tip stopped an inch from Jake Sullivan's throat. He didn't flinch. After 3 weeks in a Threxian prison cell, death would be a mercy. The guards hauled him into the throne room, forcing him to his knees on cold obsidian floor. Queen Veyara sat above him, her 4 eyes gleaming like polished amber, her scaled skin shimmering purple in the dim light. She was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with enough muscle to crush his skull with one hand. "Human pilot," she said, her voice like grinding stone. "You killed 17 of my soldiers when your ship fell from the sky." Jake met her gaze. "They shot me down first." A murmur rippled through the court. No prisoner spoke to the queen this way. Veyara's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "You have courage. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless." She leaned forward. "I offer you a choice, Jake Sullivan. Marry my daughter Kelara, and you will have your freedom. Refuse, and you die today." Jake's mind reeled. "What? My daughter's mate died in the battle where you were captured. Without a bonded partner, rival houses will challenge her claim to succession. War will consume my empire." Veyara's claws scraped against her throne. "A human husband is unprecedented. Unpredictable. It will give my enemies pause and buy Kelara time to consolidate power. And if I say no, then you are no use to me." Jake looked around the chamber. 12 guards, weapons ready. No windows, no escape. He thought of home, of Earth, of ever seeing open sky again. "I accept." The queen's laugh echoed through the hall. "Bring my daughter." Kelara entered like a storm. She was smaller than her mother, maybe 6.5 feet, but moved with lethal grace. Her scales were deep crimson and her eyes burned with barely contained rage. She looked at Jake with open disgust. "This," she hissed, "this weak, soft thing is supposed to replace Thorin? Thorin is dead." Veyara said coldly, "And you need protection. I need nothing from a human." Jake stood slowly, ignoring the guards. "I didn't ask for this either, princess, but I'm not weak, and I'm not soft." Kelara moved so fast he barely saw it. Her clawed hand stopped at his chest, pressing hard enough to draw blood through his shirt. "Prove it," she whispered, "or I will kill you myself before any assassin gets the chance." For 3 days, Kelara refused to speak to him, except in clipped commands. They trained in a private courtyard, away from the court's prying eyes. She was faster, stronger, and had a lifetime of combat training. Jake had human ingenuity and desperation. On the 4th day, she finally asked a question. "How did your species survive long enough to reach the stars?" "You're fragile." Jake dodged her strike and rolled behind a pillar. "We're stubborn. And we cheat." He kicked the pillar's base. It toppled, forcing Kelara to leap back. Jake used the moment to close distance, getting inside her guard. She could have broken him, but she hesitated, curious. "Humans fight dirty," he said. "We use terrain, tools, psychology. We make the strong fight on our terms." For the first time, Kelara's expression shifted. Interesting. That night, assassins came. Jake woke to the whisper of a blade cutting air. He rolled off the sleeping platform as a dagger embedded where his head had been. 3 figures in black moved through the shadows of his chamber. He grabbed the only weapon in reach, a ceremonial metal rod from the wall, and swung hard. The first assassin blocked easily, but Jake wasn't aiming for him. The rod smashed a glowing light fixture, plunging the room into darkness. Threxians had better night vision than humans, but Jake had studied the room's layout obsessively. He knew every corner. He moved by sound, by memory. A kick to the back of a knee, a strike to where he heard breathing. When the lights blazed back on, Kelara stood in the doorway, 2 dead assassins at her feet. The third was unconscious against the wall, courtesy of Jake's improvised club. She stared at him. "You fight like prey that refuses to die. On Earth, we call it survival." Kelara walked to the unconscious assassin and checked his armor markings. "House Corvin. They've wanted my mother's throne for decades." She looked back at Jake. "The wedding is in 3 days. They will try again, and next time will be worse. Then we make sure we're ready." Something changed between them after that. Kelara began teaching Jake Threxian combat techniques, and he showed her human tactics, ambush points, misdirection, using an opponent's strength against them. They trained until Jake's muscles screamed and his hands bled. On the second night, Kelara told him the truth. Thorin wasn't killed in battle, she said quietly. They sat on the courtyard wall, watching twin moons rise. He was poisoned 3 days before the fight. He went into combat already dying. The human attack was convenient timing for the traitors. Jake felt a chill. You know who did it? I have suspicions, but no proof. That's why my mother's offer to you was strategic. A human husband makes me unpredictable, dangerous. It buys time to root out the conspiracy. She turned to him. You're not just a shield, Jake Sullivan. You're a message. What? Message that I will ally with anyone, even a former enemy, to destroy those who betray the Empire. Jake understood then. This wasn't about romance or politics. It was about war, played on a different battlefield. We should assume the wedding itself is the target, he said. Maximum visibility, maximum chaos if it goes wrong. Kelara nodded. I've thought the same. The ceremony requires us to be unarmed, surrounded by witnesses. We'll be exposed. Then we don't play by their rules. Jake smiled. We cheat. The wedding hall blazed with light and color. Hundreds of Threxian nobles filled the chamber, their scales glittering like jewels. Jake wore ceremonial robes that felt like a straitjacket, but hidden in the fabric were a dozen small weapons, each carefully placed during the preparation. Kelara walked beside him, her crimson scales adorned with gold, and he knew she was similarly armed. Queen Veyara began the ceremony, her voice carrying through the hall. The ritual words were ancient, binding. Jake repeated his vows in halting Threxian, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. Then the lights went out. Chaos erupted instantly. Jake dropped to the floor as energy blasts scorched the air above him. He pulled a blade from his sleeve and moved toward where he'd last seen Kelara. Her hand found his in the darkness. Northeast corner, she whispered. 20 hostiles, maybe more. The Queen? Protected by her royal guard. We're the targets. Jake's mind raced. The assassins had planned this perfectly, cutting power and attacking in the confusion. But they'd made one mistake. They assumed their targets would panic. Follow my lead, Jake said, and trust me. He pulled a small device from his robe and threw it toward the main cluster of attackers. It wasn't a weapon. It was a human flare, blinding bright in the darkness. The assassins flinched, their superior night vision suddenly a liability. Kelara moved like lightning, her blade finding throats and hearts. Jake fought beside her, using speed and unpredictability to compensate for his weaker strength. They drove toward the exit, not away from the fight but through it. Where are we going? Kelara demanded. To end this. The person who planned this is here, watching. We're going to find them. They burst through a side door into a corridor. Jake had memorized the palace layout, every escape route and hidden passage. He led them through the maze, Kelara trusting his instinct. They found Lord Vakrin in the security control room, surrounded by guards. He was the Queen's senior advisor, the one person who could have disabled the defenses and coordinated the attack. His face went pale when he saw them. Impossible, he breathed. You should be dead. You're not the first to think that, Jake said. The fight was brutal and short. Vakrin's guards were skilled, but they hadn't expected a human who fought like a cornered animal and a princess who fought with cold fury. When it was over, Vakrin knelt in his own blood, defeated. Why? Kelara demanded. Because your mother is weak, Vakrin spat. Making alliances with humans, showing mercy to enemies. The Empire needs strength, not sentiment. You know nothing of strength, Kelara said quietly, and ended him. The next morning, Jake stood in the throne room again. This time, no spear pointed at his throat. Queen Veyara looked tired but pleased. The conspiracy had been crushed. Kelara's position was secure. The marriage contract is fulfilled, Veyara said. You are free to leave, Jake Sullivan. I will provide a ship and safe passage to human space. Jake looked at Kelara. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. I appreciate the offer, Your Majesty, Jake said slowly. But I think I'll stay. Surprise flickered across Veyara's face. You would choose to remain here? You could go home. I've been thinking about that word. Home. Jake stepped closer to Kelara. I crashed here expecting to die. Instead, I found something worth fighting for. Not just survival, but purpose. Respect. He looked at Kelara. Partnership. Kelara's hand found his, her clawed fingers gentle. You truly wish to stay? If you'll have me. Not because of a contract or political necessity, but because I choose it. For the first time since they'd met, Kelara smiled. It was fierce and beautiful and entirely genuine. Then you are truly free, Jake Sullivan, she said, because you chose your own chains. Queen Veyara laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. It seems my daughter has found a mate worthy of her after all. Welcome to the Empire, human. I suspect you will make our enemies regret the day they underestimated you. Jake squeezed Kelara's hand. He'd come to this world as a prisoner, bound by necessity and survival. But standing here, bloodied and battered and alive, he'd never felt more free. Freedom wasn't about escape. It was about choosing where you stood, who you stood with, and what you were willing to fight for. He'd made his choice, and he'd make it again every single day.